and instructions are provided on the Town of Lee's website at leenh.org. If anybody has a problem with access, please call 603-659-5414. Please note that all votes that are taken during this meeting shall be done by roll call vote. Let's start the meeting by taking a roll call attendance. When each member states their presence, also please state whether there is anyone in the room with you during this meeting, which is required in the right to know law. Mr. Bugby?
I'm here and alone.
Mr. Brown?
I'm here and I'm alone.
Mr. LaCourse, I am here and alone as well. Thank you.
In my backup documents?
Mr. LaCourse, can I bring something to your attention?
Please.
Since we now have an automated attendant at the new facility, what extension do people call when they dial that 659-5414 number? I assume it's 306, but we should include that as well, I would think.
Can you just come over here?
Oh, I'm seeing what you're saying, Scott, on what he just read into the record. Scott?
Excuse me?
Are you talking about what he just read into the record?
Correct.
Yeah, okay. Okay, I'll talk to Denise and Julie about that tomorrow. Yep.
So you've got to close all this stuff out on your desktop first.
It would be Julie's extension, whatever that is. Yes.
Well, we should make that known, because if people just call a number, they get the automated attendant and they won't know where to leave the message. So
go into your files.
Great.
Okay, who's ever talking in the background, could you mute yourself? Except for you, Scott. You were talking.
That's Denise.
You can mute me anytime you want, Mr. LaCourse.
All right. So if you're not talking, please mute so I don't hear any background clatter, because I'm getting older. I don't hear too good. Okay. First order of business, a road acceptance public hearing. Daniels Drive and is it Armstrong Way? Who's presenting?
I can present. So Daniels Drive and Armstrong Way was part of the Cheney subdivision that was approved several years ago. They've completed it. The road to our specifications, once approved, they will get a maintenance bond and the amount determined by the town engineer and accepted by the Public Works manager, Steve Bullock. This is a normal practice that the select board have to vote to accept the road, and the 2-year maintenance bond covers any road error, any issues with the road and the cisterns.
Is there any letters or comments associated with this? Anybody from the public wants to make comment at this time, since it is a public hearing?
So do you want them to raise their hand if they
raise their hand if they want to make a statement that's associated with this road acceptance? I don't see any. I'm looking in the chat box down here. I don't see anything down there as well. Therefore, I'll close the public hearing. Therefore, I move to accept Daniels Drive and Armstrong Way as town-owned street and right-of-way and approve the maintenance bond of $48,000 as recommended by the town engineer. Do I have a second?
Second.
We do have a second on the floor. Any discussion on the motion?
Oh, just to be clear, the town, what is this title now? The Public Works manager has accepted this as well, I assume?
Yes.
Okay. I'm fine.
You fine?
The only thing I would say, sorry, I was on the phone. The fire department called me. The furnace light Karen's going off at the old town hall.
Oh.
The only thing I would say when you entertain the motion to make the motion is the center part of that development. So it goes in a circle. So all the stuff in the houses in the middle, there's above ground drainage that runs almost flat through there. And I would just entertain or request that when you make the motion to accept the road, that you say that the drainage in the center of the development would not be the town's responsibilities, but be left up to the homeowners to maintain.
Karen?
Yep, that's fine. There's an ongoing drainage issue in the center that is not the town's responsibility, but it is an issue that the developer needs to address.
Can we leave that reflected in the minutes?
I can remove my second if you want to change it, Mr. LaCourse.
Okay.
There is a gentleman's hand he has raised it shortly after you close the meeting.
If it's associated with the road, I will allow it.
It is associated with the road.
Okay, who's running this? Denise, are you there? I can't accept for somebody else.
Yes, I'm here.
Can you allow this gentleman who wants
Oh.
to make a statement about the road in?
Go to attendees.
Yeah.
Who is it?
Frank Beardsworth. Allowed to talk?
Yes.
Go over here. Promote to panelist.
Is he there?
I don't know. He should be.
Are you there?
Hello. Yeah, this is Frank Beardsworth. How are you?
Okay.
Okay, you have the floor, sir. Go ahead.
Good. Hey, thank you so much. I appreciate you giving me the time. Just wanted to reiterate what I just heard a moment ago about the drainage challenges in that entire development. It's not really just in the inner circle of the development. It's every property on the circle as well. Every time there's even a not very significant rainfall, there are real challenges shedding that water. I've been working with Chinburg since the day my daughter signed on to building that property, and the problem has not been addressed. It's been kicked down, the can has been kicked down the road continuously. I know that your team is looking to accept the road, but the road itself, I think, is going to have some impending issues going forward if we don't take care of the drainage problems, because water piles up on both sides of the road around the entire development. And unless the road was developed in such a way to handle that type of shedding of water, you're going to have problems going forward. I really think the city has to really take that in consideration before they accept this road, or at least we see a plan. I've been asking for a plan from Chinburg for a long time. I've tried to work with them and their engineers to put a plan together, both a water elevation shedding plan, and all they do is move dirt around here and there to try to shed the water, and it just creates another problem. I really think the town needs to consider this going forward before they accept the road. And that's what I have.
Does anybody else want to comment? I do understand your position. I think at this time it's warranted. If you will pull back your second, I'll take off my first, and we'll ask ask Karen to deal with this from her end a little bit more.
I've already removed my second.
All right.
I can explain. I have reached out to our town engineer and I have reached out to our town attorney. The road has been built to our specifications. It's been inspected. I don't know, I can check with our attorney again tomorrow, but it's my understanding that they have done the road has been built to what it was designed and approved back in, I think it was 2013. So I can absolutely check with our town attorney again tomorrow if you want to table this to the next meeting, but I have spoken and worked with Mr. Beardsworth many, many times, but I don't know what we can do because it has been built to what we approved for the design.
So let me ask a secondary question. Is there a rush on this?
Well, Chinburg would like the town to start maintaining it, yes.
Well, I guess at this point, though, I'm not going to rush it. I think it's well worth to go ahead and check it, and we can put it in the next meeting.
Okay, and then the representative from Chinburg, Paul Kerrigan, has his hand raised.
Okay, you are recognized, sir.
Denise needs to allow him to speak.
Denise, you want to open the floor to is it Hogan?
Kerrigan.
Kerrigan.
Yep, I have. Is he there?
Yes. He needs to just unmute and he's here. There you go.
Okay, Paul, you have the floor.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for having me. I represent Chinburg Development. I actually live in Lee as well. I just wanted to address a couple of the comments that Mr. Beardsworth made. Well, number one, we had our the walkthrough with the town 2 months ago. Steve Billick, Jay Stevens, Karen, and several other of the town representatives walked the subdivision, approved the road with a minor punch list. We then proceeded to take care of the items on the list, with the exception, I think, 1 or 2 of the items. And so I believe the road meets all the town standards. It was built to the plans. And I think the only issues are some drainage issues that have been addressed, when I say addressed, we've acknowledged them. We've sent the list over to the board. We have systematically started working on them, and I believe a handful of them have been completed. I'm going to guess that there may be a dozen left. Some of them are fairly minor, meaning that we just have to regrade, rake, and seed some areas in between some of the lots. Mr. Beardsworth's, I believe it's his daughter that lives there. I don't think Mr. Beardsworth actually lives there. We have been working with the Beardsworths, or the occupants of the lot 31 over the course of the last 6 months. So to say that we didn't do anything or have kicked the problem down the road is totally inaccurate. So I just wanted to make sure that was on record. We will continue to work with lot 35 to alleviate or to rectify the drainage out the backside of that. And if anybody from the town wants to take a look at those plans, the drainage in that subdivision is, a lot of it has to do with infiltration. It's a very flat area, so it's very sensitive. And yes, we are aware of that, and we are working towards making sure that we take care of our customers out there.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Hey, this is Frank Beardsworth. Can I comment on what he just said?
Yeah, one last time. Go ahead.
Thank you. So yeah, no, it's been longer than 6 months. I have to correct you on that. My daughter closed on her house last February, and I made a statement that was accepted on the site during the closure that I wanted this grade problem taken care of immediately. I was promised it would be taken care of. It hasn't been taken care of. I met with the Chinburg team in their office in Newmarket in October, maybe even sooner than that, to try to get this addressed. So when I say kicking the can down the road, I have not seen a plan from any engineer that has come up with a plan on how they're going to shed that water, because it's not just my daughter's property. It's every property on that side in the circle has a major problem. And it may require some subterranean drainage to alleviate that, because I don't know how you solve that problem without bringing up all the areas so that you can get an appropriate pitch to that ditch in the middle of the property. So I have to correct you. I have been working on this since February of last year. And I've been consistent bringing this up and bringing it forward.
So at this point, thank you very much for your comment. I heard both sides. It's not I'm judge and jury at this point. I have no interest. I think I'd like to table it so the code enforcement officer and anybody else involved can at least bring something else to the table. I know the bond you want to get released, but I want to do a little bit more due diligence. Is that okay with you, Mr. Bugby?
I'm fine with it.
Mr. Brown?
Yes, it's fine.
Okay, let's table this into 2 weeks, and hopefully we can check with counsel at this point if need be, or back to Jay Stevens. Thank you very much. We appreciate it. Next order of business, Steve Ellick is going to talk about a couple of things. You have the floor, Steve.
All right, so last meeting, I came before you for the ice skating rink, and it was approved. So we finished taking the fence down Tuesday. I got a complaint from the school that we were using a chainsaw to cut the fence down, which it wasn't a chainsaw, it was a cutoff saw, so they were close. It was loud, but it was the only way to cut the fence down. I wasn't told that it was too loud for them until 3 hours after the fact. At that point, I talked to Jim Rozicki and told him that we were going to build an ice skating rink, and he said, okay. The next day I asked him about possibly getting water from the school, and he said if the hose run wasn't too long that we could. So the day after that, we put the liner down. The school complained again that we were stapling the liner down and we were being too loud. So that brings us to Friday after we'd started filling it up. The principal called me wanting to know, or wanting to have a neighborly conversation that turned into wanting to know why I didn't notify them we were putting an ice skating rink on town property, and wanting to know if I could restrict the use of town property to Wednesdays, Saturdays, and Sundays, and then anytime after 3:15 on Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. And I informed her I do not have that authority, and I would ask the board if they would entertain that. My personal opinion in the matter is it's town property and it's a town park. And if a few people ice skating is going to be distracting, I'd like to know how, when they have gym class on the same area the ice skating rink is, that would be any more distracting than a few people ice skating compared to 20 kids running
Have
around
to run the meeting.
having gym. So she's requesting we limit the use of it on Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday to only after 3:15 or early in the morning.
Comments from anybody?
I'm sorry?
Anybody want to make a comment on this issue about the ice skating ring?
Yes, I would like to make a comment, please. I went down there, I heard this from Steve early this morning. I went down there today, did some looking around. A couple of issues. Number one, ice skating is not really a boisterous sport. This is not a new ice rink. That ice rink has come and gone on that particular piece of property in the park for quite some time. We put it up, well, I'm going to say 3 or 4 years ago, and then took it down every winter and so on and so forth. So it's nothing new. The school itself sits about 4 feet above the level of the ice skating rink. The windows that look out over the rink, way over the rink, have Venetian blinds on them, so the blinds can be pulled if the issue is the children are going to be looking out the window. I don't think we're going to get too many people during the day on the skating rink, and I suggest that if we see a problem, most certainly we should address it with signage, whatever. But right now, I really don't see any major issues in opening the rink and let people using it, because I don't anticipate during the weekdays seeing a lot of people on it. And I don't anticipate that our population, which is somewhat middle-aged and so on, that might use it, you know, they're not going to be doing any triple Lutzes out there or anything. So I really feel that we should open up the rink. Let's see how it goes. If there's an issue that certainly has any effect on the school, we should address it.
I do remember that the Board of Selectmen had decided as a 1-year trial to see how things would work out. So this is a 1-year trial. I happen to agree with Mr. Brown at this point. I think the only thing we probably could have done differently is maybe alerted the school that there would be some noise as we were constructing this temporary structure. Beyond that, I agree with Mr. Brown. Mr. Bugby, you have any comment?
Could we ask Dr. Morse? I don't know if he's informed about this particular issue, but if he could comment in terms of, from the school's perspective, are we missing something? Is there something he wishes to add about this subject?
The floor is open to anybody who wants to speak. You'll be recognized.
Thank you, Scott, for deferring to me. I appreciate it. First and foremost, I want to say to Steve that we've had an awesome relationship with the town of Lee in relation to the park over the time I've been here, which is going on 10 years. And it's been a critical part of our phys ed program, as he alluded to. I'm hoping that the ice skating rink is open to our phys ed program as well, just as the fields have been in the past for our kids to play on. In terms of this issue, I only became aware of it on Friday, and I think the whole issue is really just about the noise during construction. I don't think there's an issue with anybody using the facility during the week. I mean, to ask the town to limit its use, I think is, probably not necessary. I agree that the number of people who probably will use it during the school day is pretty minimal. And there are shades on the windows, as has been alluded to. I just want to say how much I appreciate the fact that Lee has been a good partner with us over the use of that park. And I hope that continues. And I feel bad that Steve and the principal had any words whatsoever, because I think it could have been handled much more diplomatically.
Appreciate that comment very much, and hopefully, I think we will have a good relationship. I don't see why we won't in the future.
Could we request, Dr. Morris, could you have a conversation with the principal? I forget her name. And just
Misty Lowe, yeah.
Could you just touch base with her?
I certainly will. Absolutely.
I don't want to make enemies of the Massway principal, but if she can be, if you can have a conversation with her about that.
Yep, and I feel very much the same about Steve. I haven't met Steve. I met the previous, his predecessor. But
yep.
Steve, anytime that you need to reach out, you reached out to Jim Rizicki, and that's perfectly appropriate. If anything ever gets to a point where you're uncomfortable, feel free to reach out to me as well. I definitely will talk to Principal Lowe.
And I had told Jim that day that I didn't see an issue with them using it, just like they had always used it in the past.
Awesome. I think that you'll find that our phys ed teacher, who is very, very into getting the kids outdoors, you'll find her utilizing that probably more than town residents do, quite honestly.
She came out and looked at it today and talked to us while we were putting water on it, so.
Yeah, she's a pretty energetic phys ed person and very committed to getting the kids moving. So I suspect we'll have a lot of use, even if it's not ice skating, it's, walking on it and skating with your shoes on. She's very, very committed to outdoor exercise. So I suspect it'll be used a lot by us, Steve, and if that's okay with you, then that's wonderful.
Good. Thank you.
Okay, I think that issue has been resolved. Thank you, everybody, on that. Steve, you have anything else?
Well, I got to discuss the roll-off truck that Mr. Bugby had requested that we put back on the agenda for today.
Mr. Bugby, have you had a chance to read that?
Yeah, I did. Unfortunately, Steve told me today that the truck we were looking at has been sold. So I don't know if we want to take a look at, he gave me some information about another truck that's available, and it's a little bit more expensive, and it's a new one, I believe, right, Steve?
Yeah, it's brand new. It would be, I think, $17,000 more than the other one. I think that one was $149. This one would be $166,850.
Yep.
But it's brand new.
So I did
so 5 years more.
I did a little analysis in terms of the particular costs. Because we'd be saving on the hauling costs, he would still have retained a little bit in terms of for random haulings that he would have to do, and in terms of using his maximum fuel costs, maximum labor costs, and figuring the lease payment. So we'd start, I don't know if the good term is making money, but in year 6 and I ran it through year 10, but I think it's something that we need to look into. I think it probably would be a good investment. That's what I'm looking at. The thing is logistics. Just looking in terms of what the law allows us to do. We can't take any money from capital reserve funds for this particular thing. And I think it's too late to put something on the warrant for this year. I'm not sure. I think it is, but I think this is something we need to pursue because we'd be saving our operating expenses in year 6 through whatever. And if it's a new truck, Steve, do you have an idea, how long do these trucks usually last if they're maintained properly?
So I know Durham's was, when they just traded in to get a new one, was an 06, but it was a Sterling. So it was a off model or an off brand compared to Western Star and Mack, and they just bought a Mack. but they ended up getting 22,000 for their off-brand Sterling when they got a new one a month or so ago. We only have 9 miles of the landfill and back, so that's 18 miles a trip for the most of the trip. So my estimate is the truck would last us 15 to 20 years.
Yeah. So just in terms of, and this is very rough. So by year 10, we'd be saving about 25,000, and I'm using about a 2% inflation for all the costs, and also in terms of the hauling fee. I think the hauling cost is going to go up more than 2%. Shipyard was bought out by Wheelabrator, so they're not going to let us enjoy those cheaper rates that Shipyard was giving us. So, but this is, I think, is a very conservative number. So I think after 10 years, we'd be saving about $25,000 a year in terms of costs and stuff. So I think this is something we need to pursue.
I think the hauling costs in the contract, if we didn't go with Shipyard, escalated 3% a year for the other two people that bid on it. It was a 3% increase.
So
if I remember off the top of my head correctly.
That makes it even better, but I think this is something we pursue. I know, Steve, you said that Julie had done one as well, so I'm not sure what she came out with in terms of numbers, but mine looks like it's something we need to pursue.
It wasn't much farther off of yours. The difference was, I think she added like $400 or $500 a year for FICA, and or maybe a little bit more than that for FICA and workers' comp insurance. And I think to insure the vehicle was $600 a year.
Yeah, maybe $550.
All right. That still doesn't take it out of my, at least with my consideration, those two numbers don't change it too much for me. But
the only question I would ask is how could, so obviously we can't lease it, but you could, if you chose to buy it out of a trust fund, it would just cripple the transfer station trust fund if you did that.
We can lease it. We can lease it if you want to pay for it out of the capital reserve fund. It just has to go on a warrant article.
And it's too late to put it on this year's warrant, correct, Julie?
Correct.
The only other way you could purchase is just out of operating funds. You could do that.
Yes. Yep.
For the lease, right?
For the lease.
For the lease, yes.
Mr. Brown, do you have a comment on this?
Well, I think it's something we should go ahead and do. I've talked to Steve about it a little bit. I think it makes sense for us. I do believe, really, I understand all the numbers Scott just rolled off, but I believe the savings really are going to go beyond that from an operating cost point of view, total operating cost point of view. Because we don't know, I mean, for example, there are going to be costs that we can avoid, a cost avoidance, if you would, to a certain extent. So I think we should go ahead and do it.
And I like the fact that we can be independent from haulers, that's for sure. So at this time, I'm in agreement. So Steve, why don't you proceed? See what you can do about it. And do you have money in your budget to start leasing it?
I do not, because unless we can figure out a way to get out of the current contract we have, then I don't have the money in the budget to be able to do it until the July 1st to be able to figure out how to do it.
So that's when the shipyard contract terminates?
The shipyard contract terminates January 1.
2022?
Yes. So, or December 31st. So
I see.
You'd need to get out of it, which is why if you could have, or we could have, because the way Julie explained it to me was, you have to take it out of the trust fund on the final payment because that's when you actually own it. And then as long as there was a non-appropriation clause, you could do it without going before the voters, but you can't you can't do it without having an trust or without having a warrant. You have to have a warrant article if you take it out of the trust fund first or something, if I remember right.
So why don't, Mr. LaCourse, I suggest we ask the Public Works Manager to see if we can get out of the shipyard contract early. I'm not sure if that's possible. And if we can, then we can do something about finding out where to get these particular funds from. So
we've talked about that, me and Julie have, and she read the contract, and the only way, unless they just grant us a release, is if they've done something to warrant a termination in the contract.
Well, if one of you two can contact them and see if we can get out of the contract and them allowing us to do it, let's see if we can do that. Doesn't hurt to ask.
Yeah.
And let's try that.
I agree. Let's move forward on this at this time. Might not be able to fix it tomorrow, but maybe we can at least lay some groundwork.
Yep.
Steve, anything else at this time?
Nope.
Thank you very much. Dr. Morse, looks like you have a nice little presentation. Wow, there it is. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen, for allowing me to speak to you once again on the school budget. I thought I would start out by just talking about where the middle school project is. So the new middle school was approved by the voters at a rate of 76% in the last election, and the project started in May. All the exterior steel is up, and they've been pouring concrete, and most, if not all of the concrete has been poured to date. They started their interior steel framing. They started the fireproofing of that. They've insulated roofs, and our goal is still to occupy the building in March of 2022. So the contractor and the architect have really done a pretty amazing job. The slide you're looking at now is what's green there is actually the music hall, and all of that started out to be green. Now they're spraying it and weatherproofing it. So the next picture is an interior image, and of course it's further along than this now, of the music hall. All of those seats have been poured in concrete, and so they're starting to get to the place where they can start doing interior work. The next shot is the gymnasium, and you can see there that they have the concrete floor done and the roofing and supports done for that room. And above that is going to be an equipment room. And these next two images are just giving you a sense of, on the left, the look down from the front door to the back, and that light at the very end is actually going to be windows, and it's the library. And the one on the right is just giving you a sense of how the interior steel is going up. So the building is about, I would say, 33% done. And again, I cannot commend the architect and the contractor enough. It's really been an excellent project. So specifically talking about the proposed budget, I'm glad I'm remote so that Scott can't choke me by the time I get to the end of this, because it's all not happy. But I can tell you, you know, that we've done a lot of good work in trying to get to the place we are. So I want to talk about district highlights, the enrollment projections by school and by town, and then the financial information, of course, and our warrant articles. So the next slide really talks about what an incredibly difficult year this has been. You know, 1 week in March, we received 76% approval by the voters on the new middle school and 84% approval on our school budget. 1 week later, the governor shuts down the schools, which we thought was going to be for 3 weeks, and it turned out to be the remainder of the spring. And we struggle even to this day to get our schools open because of COVID. Part of the issue is that, you know, as we all know, New Hampshire loves to have a decentralized approach to everything, and that includes the schools. So every school system in the state has tried to figure out a path forward. Our big issue, of course, was UNH and whether the students at UNH would behave when they came back. And they did for a little bit. And then about the time Halloween hit and Thanksgiving hit and Christmas hit, I guess for lack of a better phrase, all hell broke loose. And I apologize, but that's the way I think about it in terms of how the end of the fall and early winter went. And so we continue to struggle right now, of course, at Massway. You're familiar with the fact that the 2 elementary schools I did have them return on a 2/3 in-person and 1/3 remote, trying to honor what parents wanted. We just started literally tomorrow a hybrid version where the middle school kids will be coming in a day a week, and we're still debating on the high school model. But in terms of where we are as a system, I just really wanted to talk about the impact of COVID. Our SAT scores, which is the next slide, I think, yep, really have maintained where we have seen them in the past. The difference would be in our participation rate. So although our aggregate score is still very high compared to the state and nation, normally we'd have about 99% participation. So 85% participated this fall. I also would share with the select board that normally we do these in the spring for the juniors, and the current senior class never got to do them. So the seniors as well as the juniors did them this fall. Our math scores across the board are significantly higher than the state average, as is our reading score. So, in terms of that particular issue, we're riding strong with the understanding that 14% of the kids, parents said, no matter what, you're not going in and doing testing because the COVID rates are too high. Our college placement rate continues to be one of the highest in the state. 75% of our kids last spring, even with remote learning, went on to a 4-year college. 7% went into a 3-2 or 1-year program. 17% went into the military or work, which is a very high number for us and very unusual. And 1% went to a gap year, and that is usually 3 or 4%. So there was some fluctuation in how choices that seniors made graduating. So that's interesting. And then our high school graduation rate continues to be 100%. So that's, commendable given what we've been going through. And I've already talked about the middle school. I also will just share that we've had a very active anti-racism committee. I think, we've always been involved in diversity and inclusion, but I think the Black Lives Matter, the shooting of Black men and women across the country really provided more impetus for us to be, really looking at how we're dealing with racism. But despite the fact that we're a 97% white school system, I think that really is a credit to our parents and our staff who continue to make this a priority. One of the measures I always say that's important, not just to me, but I think as human beings, is how well are we servicing children who have special needs? And I think this slide really stands out. It's been pretty consistent over the times, nearly 10 years that I've been presenting this information to you. 100% of our learning disabled kids graduate from our high school compared to only 67% across the country. None of our children with disabilities have dropped out. Almost 43% of our kids, special needs kids, enter a 4-year college. So that means that they're ready to go on to a 4-year institution. 9.2% enter a 2-year program, and 4.6% enter into a technical program or a gap year. And a third enter employment. And again, an unusual high number this particular year of the number of children who entered the military at 9.2%. So, those are pretty creditable statistics for our neediest population, and a real credit to the school system and the 3 towns that support us, because special education has always been a priority in the district, and it shows. When I start talking about enrollment, this is the enrollment as of October 1st. Now, why October 1st? Because that's the date we officially tell the state what our numbers are. The numbers fluctuate, of course. You know, it could have been October 2nd and Massway could have had 327 kids or 325 kids. But on October 1st, this is the official count date, and this is built into the funding formula. Massway had 326 children. Mohammed had 288. The middle school was at 658, and the high school is at 839. Of that number, 182 children are tuition students, largely from Barrington, and we had 17 preschool children at that point. From my very first year, this was a number that the towns were most interested in, where we were in terms of projected enrollment. I would say that, you know, we've been pretty consistent in our enrollment. Currently, we're over 2,100 students, and these projections all show us over 2,000. I remember when I was first hired 9 years ago that the projection was that the district would be someplace in the 1,600 range, and we've never gone below 2,000 in the time that I've been superintendent. So I think those are all very solid numbers, and something that we can, you know, build our budgets and our school system around. The very next slide just gives you a sense of where the towns have been annually. And again, I talk about this and how it impacts the funding formula. You can see that Durham has been, you know, all over the map. Lee has been all over the map, and so has Madbury. Sometimes you're up, sometimes you're down. When you're up, you get more state aid. When you're down, you get less state aid. And so that impacts the state funding formula. So in terms of the budget and how we approached it this year as a school system, we really approached it far differently than we have in the past. Normally, the school board would see the budget sometime in October in order to be where we are tonight. But that's not how it worked. This year, the school board, I asked the school board to form a budget committee of the school board members, and 3 members stepped up. Al Howland chaired it from Durham. Brian Cisneros was on the committee from Lee, and Michael Williams from Madbury. And the reason I did that was going all the way back to where Scott was writing impact tax numbers on a napkin and telling me this is what he thought the numbers were going to be a year ago. And, you know, I just laughed at him because I knew full well, you know, that we had no idea. And at the same time, he was calculating based on the knowledge that he knew at that point. And so, you know, a year later, really what the board did was it set a parameter on the growth of the budget. So when about a month after Scott was doing the back of the napkin, I did my own back of the napkin, and I was petrified, quite honestly. I knew that I needed to bring in a budget that was affordable. And before we started working on the budget, I actually saw a growth of about 6.5%. And I knew full well that that was going to be untenable and unaffordable by our taxpayers. And at the same time, Sue Caswell and I traditionally have kind of done this work by ourselves without a lot of feedback from the school board. And because of the middle school bond, I really felt strongly that we needed board support and guidance as we built this particular budget. Because if you remember, the 21-22 budget is the budget that was the most impacted by the middle school bond. And what our goal was to try to absorb as much of that growth as possible. And we used several techniques, but to start this off, the school board adopted a budget goal that gave me 3 options: 2.5%, 3%, or 3.5%. And remember that the new middle school bond is there, and that's never been included in a budget before. So Sue Caswell and I had to figure out how we could bring a budget in at any of these numbers, considering what we knew. And at the same time, I'll go back to that presentation where Scott was doing the back of the napkin stuff. And I said to you guys, I will work tirelessly to bring in a budget that's affordable, that doesn't cripple the taxpayers and doesn't have a huge increase on the school budget. And so that's really where we started. And you can see, the impact of those increases. And ultimately, the board approved a 3% increase. But I want to share something with you that I think is important. The only reason that the increase is 3% is because the state did not fund Lee and Madbury at the same level as they did this year for next year. So the heart of this is really, we would have come in with a 2.39% budget, but because we had to compensate for the loss of revenue to Lee and Madbury, the actual increases impact is 3%. The other thing that I would share with you is that the state shifted more retirement costs onto the school system to the tune of over $600,000. Had that not happened, the budget would have come in at less than 2%. So we had two factors that were outside of our control, and then we had a couple of factors that were inside of our control, and I'll talk about that as we go forward. The next slide is really giving you the kind of the history of where we started. I said last year that in my mind, Sue and I were thinking the possibility of this would be, a 6.5% budget increase. But when we brought in our first budget, we brought it in at 4.65%. And then we did something that was within our control, and we offered a retirement incentive. The retirement incentive drew about 19 staff forward who are age eligible and able to retire because they have the service years. And that saved the district, will save the district over $600,000 in personnel costs. The nice thing about a retirement incentive is that savings goes on annually until such time as they reach the top of the scale, which is about 15 years out. So your initial savings is large. In the first several years, it continues to be large. And then over time, of course, it gets negated because they've been in the system over a long time. But that is a tool that the board had relatively early and made a decision to use relatively early. And as a result, we had a pretty high number of individuals, the staff members who were willing to take part in that. So that was pretty big. And then the other thing that we did to control the, I shouldn't say we did, I should say one of the fortuitous things that happened to us. So about 2 years ago, when Sue and I were doing the estimate on the interest of the new bond, we initially used 5.5%. And then as time went on, we'd lower it to 4.5%. And as time went on, we lowered it to 3.5%. The actual bond that was put out in July, we were so lucky, came in at less than 2% at 1.97%. So that helped us bring the cost of the budget down even further. And so that kind of gives you that history of where we started and where we are. So, then we get into the, traditional slide of what are the major drivers. The major drivers for this budget are the 6.5% increase in health insurance. That also was actually better than we thought, because initially we thought it would be around 10%. We're in the second year of the teachers agreement. I talked about the New Hampshire retirement system shifting costs over to us. I didn't talk about the transportation lease. The transportation department, when we go back to the beginning of my time with all of you, our buses were in really sad in disrepair. Literally, and this is not exaggeration, brakes were failing, transmissions were failing, and so forth. So we put together a 10-year plan in terms of keeping our buses or updating the fleet on a regular basis annually. So this cost is continuing that. And then, trying to make sure that we're keeping our capital costs relevant to the budget goal we have. The next slide is really just to give you a sense of where we are today and where we've been. So as I said, you know, the actual budget increase in terms of impact was 2.39%, but because of that revenue loss from the state to Lee and Madbury, it actually rounds out to 3%. The voters allowed us really early on in my tenure, I think it was the second year, to create an emergency fund. And we've only used it once before, but never to this level. So as the board was looking at the tax impact of this proposed budget, because it sounds all reasonable until you get to what's the impact, the board decided to use $500,000 of the emergency fund to try to have an impact on taxes across the district. And you all recall that our agreement with the 3 towns is proportionate to the number of students in our valuation. So Durham picks up like 53% of the budget. So you can look at that 500,000 and 250 of it plus gets shifted over to Durham to impact taxes. And then you're about a third, and Madbury picks up the last amount. So even if we had $1 million to put in, it's not going to have a dramatic impact across all 3 towns, but it's the money that we had, and we felt this was the year to use it. So when we get to the bottom line of the general fund, the budget we're proposing is $48,707,995. We need to include the contract for the bus drivers, which is $18,070, and the contract for our para-educators, which is $63,853. So the total warrant article is $48,789,919. The next slide just gives you a sense of how the various cost centers work in the district. And the reason I did the one in green, because that's my office, and I don't want anybody to think that that's my pay increase. That's really the bond payment on the new middle school that caused the lion's share of that increase. So that $507,248 is mostly, I mean like almost all, the new middle school bond payment. And then you can see where the 2 union contracts were brought in, and that gets us to the place where the impact is 3%. And the next slide is the one that is most difficult for me to present tonight, because for all the work that the school board did, I couldn't make up for the loss of revenue from the state. So I have friends in the North Country, and I'll just share why I said that in a second. But you can see that the proposed budget on Durham is including the warrants on the union contract is 34 cents per thousand. And then on Lee, it's $2.07, and on Madbury is $1.47. So my friend in the North Country, who's a superintendent, her budget went up $33,000, and her mill effort went up to $6.75 per thousand. And so that loss of revenue across the state right now is having a dramatic impact on these estimated mill efforts. So, you know, in talking to various people who are connected to Concord, most people think that the funding will increase and offset this. This is, as Sue Caswell will tell you, this is our worst case scenario, assuming Concord does nothing. But we suspect that Concord will do something, even though it's, you know, controlled, all 3 bodies are controlled by Republicans, because so much of the state is in the same pickle, but worse. And so we think that will happen. And of course, this doesn't include any valuation increase, which, you know, Sue and Julie would figure out next September, and then that would drive these costs down as well. So I share that so that you can kind of get a reference point to the next slide. And the next slide really gives you the sense of, you know, what our projections were and what the reality was. And you can most often see in this slide that at this point in the budget process, Sue and I overestimate the impact on taxes for the most part. Occasionally we were dead on or very close, but usually we're over projecting because we're trying to be super conservative in what these projections are. And, you know, this year is a good example. So this year we projected an increase in Lee, and the fact is that it was a decrease in Lee. The same thing in Madbury, we projected an increase and it turned out to be a decrease. So when we look at these projections this early in the budget process, I go back to Scott writing on the back of a napkin. That's really what this is. It looks like it's not on the back of the napkin, but it's just as creditable as writing on the back of the napkin because these tax rates aren't set until September of this year. So then we just go to the default budget. So if our budget fails, it would mean that we would have $92,795 less to work with. You know, I don't ever make any prediction of a budget passing or failing. You know, the highest we ever seen was last year at 84%. And in my tenure, the lowest was around 55% or so. And that was the first year I was superintendent. So the default budget simply means that if the voters don't approve the budget, then the school system has $92,795 less to work with. The warrant articles are pretty straightforward. The first warrant article, or Article 3, just really captures everything that I've said tonight in one warrant. And so this is the catch-all warrant. If the voters approve this, then essentially the budget, the operating budget is approved. Then the next warrant, warrant 4, is the bus driver warrant, and that gets added to Article 3. And Article 5 is the para-educator union contract, and that gets added to our warrant Article 3, and that gives us the total budget for the year. Article 6 is a change in law. And, you know, this is a really good year to talk about Article 6 because the district has taken fund balance and built out its emergency funds. So we never asked the voters for new money to fund the emergency fund. What we've asked the voters is to allow us to put money aside from our fund balance. And that's what we've done over the last 6 years. And that's where the $500,000 comes from. But the law changed this year, and the law is allowing us to go up to 5%. And this is a good thing because, you know, if we are able to save for that rainy day when we are in an emergency like this proposed budget, then there's money there to draw from to try to have an impact on taxes. And that's what the money's for. It's to have an impact on taxes. And then Article 7, part of the middle school is to include a solar array on the roof and over the parking area. And that's great, but in 7 years, the district would have the opportunity to buy out the contract related to the solar array. And so this is the current board saying to a future board, we want to put $125,000 a year away for 7 years so that that future board will have the ability to buy out that solar array. The advantage to that is that the taxpayers in the district will save over $2 million in utility costs if that future board in 7 years executes this particular contract language. And that's nothing but great for the district and for the taxpayers. And then just finally, in terms of where we are, next week is deliberative session. We have chosen to continue exactly as we have always, I should say exactly. We're going to have an in-person deliberative session. I know that you guys are doing the alternative method. The The issue for us is that we will use the auditorium like we always do. We'll socially distance at 6 feet apart. We'll be wearing masks. We'll have the gymnasium set up as a space for overflow crowd, and that will be socially distanced and masked. And then we'll use the music room behind the auditorium for anybody who chooses to not use a mask. All 3 spaces will have video and audio, and hopefully it works well. And so anybody who has a question will still be able to ask their question regardless of what space they're in, and they'll be able to see the deliberative session visually. So it should work okay. It's not without its challenges any more than what you guys have decided to do, just in terms of, you know, logistics. It's not the same, but we're trying to keep it as close to the same as possible. And then, of course, you know, the actual vote on the budget is March 9th in Durham from 7 to 7, at the high school in Lee at the safety complex from 7 to 7, and in Madbury at the town hall from 11 to 7.
No.
So I'd be glad to answer any questions that you all have and go from here.
Thank you, Dr. Morse. I appreciate your detailed explanation, and I thank you for coming routinely to the board to update us. It really provides a forum, but also an opportunity to keep our fingers on the pulse. So I want to thank you and your staff for doing that. But the floor is open for questions for Dr. Morse and staff, because I think Sue's there, correct?
Yep, Sue Caswell's here as well.
Hi, this is Julie. I just want to point out that our meeting is at the transfer station. It's not at the safety complex.
All right, thank you, Julie.
Thank you, Julie. That is correct on the warrant.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, thanks.
It's a drive-through, correct?
Yes.
Yes. Any questions for Dr. Morse at this time?
I also want to say thank you to Julie for sending out the reminder an hour before the meeting starts. I wish everybody did that, because it's so hard to find the email that you're trying to open a meeting with. It was just really very, very nice of her to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I have 5 questions and a comment, but Julie just asked one of them, so now I'm down to 4.
Wow.
Do you have your napkin out, Scott?
Yeah, well, don't diss napkin calculations. They're very important. So the first thing I have is on your slide number 9. I'm familiar with SAT, but what is NHSAS? What is that? Is it another kind of test?
Yes, it's the statewide testing that's required from grades 3 through 8.
Okay. All right. So this is another thing. Next question I have is number 11. You mentioned there's 182 tuition students. You said most of them from Barrington. Where's the rest of the students coming from?
Occasionally we get a student from Northwood or Portsmouth or some other community. And that's largely due to, I mean, they pay the tuition rate, but it's usually due to some kind of circumstance where a child needs to be in a different school system for numerous reasons. It could be that the child is being bullied to the point where they need to be in a safe place, that kind of thing. And so both school boards have to agree to that placement. And another one, Scott, might be if somebody moves halfway through their senior year, in which case, in that particular case, we wouldn't charge tuition because we're trying to be a good neighbor, a good person, entity to help a senior who's looking to make sure they graduate with their senior class. But for the most part, it's a tuition paying arrangement that we reach into because a child needs help. And we do the same with others. We send a student to another school system if they need a fresh start, that kind of thing.
All right. My next question is on your slide number 22. One of the things I've seen, and I'm not sure how this is affecting your food service, but kids aren't there as there usually are, and you still have expenses associated. How are you guys doing with food service? Are you over budget, under budget? How is that working for you as a district?
We are so far over budget. Our estimates are so far over budget, it's scary, Scott. So we continue to provide food across the district to any family who wants it.
Okay.
But the bottom line is that, you know, in Sue's estimations, we would see probably anywhere from a $250,000 to $350,000 loss in food service after 7 years of a profit. And so, you know, we continue, you know, I'm sure this has happened on the town side as well. We've been incredibly frugal in some areas in order to make up for those areas that we don't have any control over. I totally anticipate we'll end the budget in the black. And so I'm not worried about that, but I do fret over this particular issue, and there's not much I can do about it because we already are running a abnormally low number of employees to make the food and get it out to the families.
My last question really covers your pages number 27 and 28. I noticed on the other warrant articles, it says the school board recommends this appropriation, but on 6 and 7, there's no such language. Is that on purpose, Dr. Morse, or can you give us a little detail in terms of why they're not approving those or recommending those?
We're talking about the warrant articles related to...
Yeah, all the warrant articles except 6 and 7 say the school board recommends this appropriation, but on 6 and 7, there is no such language. Is that on purpose? Is there some reason why they're not recommending those two?
It's not required, but we did adjust the warrant to reflect that. I noticed
Oh, okay.
that. You're right. We caught that before the warrant was done. So we didn't update the PowerPoint though. Thanks, Scott.
So I assume they are recommending 6 and 7 then, Sue?
Yes, I'm quite sure. And I think, yeah, I think we did anyways, even if we didn't have to, because if they're non-monetary, they don't need that. But I said, like you said, I think we should be consistent and they should all say that. And they do, I believe.
Okay. All right. And you will change like the issue Julie brought up, because I've got a notification from you guys, the little postcard that went out at the wrong location. So the voters are going to be confused as it is. So if you're sending out one place and we're having it in another, so I don't know if you're sending out any more notifications.
We will.
That would be great.
Well, won't be any more postcards, Scott, but we'll definitely send it out through our instant messenger. So we'll hit the 2,200 families in the district at least.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah,
That's the end of my questions.
Well, thank you very much, Scott. Actually, Dr. Morris, I have a couple. How many did you say were taking the retirement program?
About 19, John.
Mm-hmm. How many faculty do you expect you have to replace them? You just can't retire them.
Well, I've chosen in this particular environment not to replace two classroom teachers, 2 special ed teachers, and 4 paraeducators. Paraeducators weren't part of that list. Largely what I'm trying to do in this particular year, John, is to make sure that our staffing aligns with our student population. And so we had a couple of situations where I felt comfortable recommending to the board that we not replace classroom teachers and special educators. Having going through it very, very carefully with the administration and the special education coordinator. So any staff that I didn't replace, I felt this was the year not to replace them.
Just a curiosity, are there other people of age and time and rank to retire in the future?
Yeah, if you think about, the traditional bell curve is this nice even bubble. And in our school system, that bubble is very skewed to the right, meaning we have a lot of people with a lot of experience. Mm-hmm. The question is, do we have a lot of people who have a lot of experience and who are age eligible? And so even though we have a lot of people with a lot of experience, we don't have a lot of people who are age eligible outside of this year, because this will really take a lion's share of those who are age eligible out of circulation. These are really great teachers, and I really will miss them, but this is an opportunity to adjust our payroll, and so we're trying to take advantage of it.
And tuition students, I've asked this before, I just want to make a matter of record. It's pretty flat, the number of students you're taking in now. Do you expect any increases in tuition students?
No, it's pretty flat at this point. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. And someone had asked me, so I'm going to put it on the table at this point. With a brand new middle school is kind of exciting. You expect tuition students for the middle school?
Not really, because you know, the younger children tend to stay within their districts. I mean, would we accept a student from tuition? Sure, if we had the room, but it's not typical that you see anyone in the K-8 area send their children off into a different school district. Usually, parents like to keep them closer to home.
Thank you. Anybody else have a question for Dr. Morrison's staff? Oh, Karen says, what happens if we postpone the voting?
Well, we have the authority under the latest legislation to postpone the voting. It's not something that we felt was worth the effort. People are used to doing the school stuff in February and March, and so we decided to continue with the traditional schedule.
Okay, thank you. I'm looking to see if I see any hands up or anything floating around out there. Do you have anything, Julie or Denise, anybody?
No.
I don't see anything.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Dr. Morrison staff. We truly appreciate you coming and updating us on the activities.
Well, thank you guys very much for allowing us one more time to take up a little bit of your time.
Thank you. Next item of business, library trustees. Who has the floor?
Annie should. She needs to be recognized.
Okay. This is Annie Gazowski, and we have we've taken a couple of proposals in recently moving forward with the building project, and a couple of them, one of them is from Geotechnical Services. It's a company that SMP Architecture has worked with, and their proposal came in above the $5,000. So we were realized that usually there's a bid system for things that are above $5,000. So that was one of the questions we had tonight, was do we need to put this, the Geotechnical Services out to bid to get the borings done for the basement and to see what the soils are within that area. And we had a meeting with Karen Rossi and Bill Booth. They attended, we all Zoomed together, and they looked at the plan and they gave us a list of things that need to happen. And when these two proposals came in, we sent them to Karen and Bill, and they looked over them. So what we need to do now is we need to get permission to contract with these people.
Julie, do we have to bid?
The board can waive the requirement. Plus, it might be for services, for professional services. We often don't go out to bid.
Mm-hmm. And how much did you say it was over the top?
It came in at $5,700. That was the proposal from Geotechnical Services. And Karen also mentioned and recommended that for the engineering, that we would go to Jones and Beach, which the town has used before. And they sent a proposal also for around $5,000. But we can wait on that one for a while, but the borings have to be done and the soils have to be tested by a soil scientist. So that's the next step in all of this.
I don't see it's much of an increase. I don't have a problem with that. Mr. Bugby, what's your opinion?
Can we step back a little bit, Mr. LaCourse?
Go ahead.
I think one of the things that came up at the last meeting that we had is in terms of the cost of all this. And I was a little bit startled about the $800,000. So I think at some point the board needs to have a discussion about what that particular number is.
Mm-hmm.
They have 380 some odd thousand in one of their capital reserve funds for the building, and then 130, which we've got a warrant article to take 100,000 out for that.
Right.
So I'm envisioning, at least me, I'm envisioning if that's the amount of money that they have available, they can augment it by fundraising, but I'm not in favor of having any more town funds go to this particular project at this particular time.
I understand
Okay.
your can you speak to this issue, allowing them to move forward for this study of soils?
I could. So the difference is $750 or $700.
Yes, that's all.
I'm a taxpayer. If I can get it for cheaper, I would rather get it for cheaper.
Mr. Brown?
Well, I'm a little confused about what the exact difference is now. We were at a number, and now the number just is going to go up by $5,000. Is that right?
No. The first proposal by Geotechnical Services is the one that we were wondering about whether or not we had to put it out to bid, because their proposal came in at $5,700, and usually the bidding amount is $5,000. Although Julie said there can be a waiver.
So we're talking about $700.
Yes.
That's it.
Okay.
So what was the number from Jones and Beach? The same services or different services?
Different services. They'll be doing the engineering, the civil engineering for the building, and theirs came in at $5,000.
That's a separate contract.
That's a separate thing.
Two separate proposals. Yes.
My opinion on this is to go forward with it. I think it's timely to stop moving this library construction and start getting it to some kind of endpoint. I do agree with Scott. I don't want to get out of hand, but at the same time, in these initial stages, it has to be done, the borings anyways.
Right.
Do we need a motion on this?
Any other questions for the library trustees? I think there are a couple of them at the meeting.
Well, this is Julie. My only question are these funds for this funds that you've already been approved to spend, or are you asking the board to give you an additional $5,700?
This would be coming out of the capital reserve fund that we took the $16,500 for the design services. So it would be out of that same capital reserve fund, the one that has the selectmen as the agents to expend.
Okay, so my question though is, I'm sorry, because I was confused. You're asking for an additional $5,700 out of the capital reserve fund?
Yes, $5,700 for the geotechnical services.
Okay.
So it's funding that's already been approved.
No, they're asking for another $5,700 to come out of a capital reserve fund, which if the board decides to do that tonight does require a vote.
So I guess where I am, Mr. LaCourse, I would like to see them at least get one other quote. If we're in the same ballpark, that's fine. It doesn't take that long to get another quote.
On the borings for the soil.
On the borings, yes. Yeah. There's other companies that do it. If it's, if they're the same or close, that's fine. If it's a lot less,
all right,
why not let the taxpayer get that reduced cost? So,
you okay with that, Mr. Brown?
Yes.
All right, you got it. Let's get another estimate.
Okay, thank you.
Bring it back to the board when you get it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Next item. Mr. Bugby, you have the floor. Town Hall.
I don't think she's done, John.
Oh, she's still going? Go ahead.
I think so.
Anything else, libraries?
No, thank you. That's
okay.
all. Sorry.
Thank you. Mr. Bugby, you have the floor, sir.
Are you accepting questions?
John, yeah. I'm sorry. I have two people with hands up.
Oh, okay. Let's go ahead with the hands up. Whoever's first, Julie.
I've got John Tappan.
Okay, John, go ahead.
I have three comments. The first about the plans that are presented to the public. The building plans should show the required zoning setbacks, especially from the wet soils zone, because just over half of the addition is within the 75-foot setback. Second, the plan shows a 1.5 foot by 16-foot bump out on the side facing the bog. This increases the intrusion into the 75-foot wet soils setback. The unit cost of this 24 gross square foot area is significantly more expensive than the rest of the addition. And that's because the bump out adds 2 outside corners, 2 inside corners to the addition. The outside finishes of the bump out are different from the rest of the building. That adds to the cost. There appears to be no functional purpose to the bump out, no functional benefit. And if there's any external cosmetic value to the bump out, it can only be appreciated from the bog side of the building, not from the public side facing the road. Instead of the bump out, the addition of that 25 gross square foot area could be achieved just by lengthening the addition by 1 foot. And that would cost much less than the bump out. Also, if that area was achieved just by lengthening the building, the addition, that would be entirely or almost entirely outside of the 75-foot wet soil setback. And then my last question, the library with the addition appears to have only 1 accessible entrance. And I'm not sure if that meets the ADA requirements, specifically section 206.4.1 regarding that 60% of public entrances be accessible. That third question I think could be answered offline. But for a town where we have limited resources and we don't like to spend a lot of money, this looks like a design that puts on some architectural features that don't really add function, but they cost money. That's my comments.
Thank you. The library people, you don't have to answer that now, just absorb it at this point.
Yes, thank you.
Now, there was somebody else wanted to speak?
Excuse me, can I just speak about, I did meet with the library, as Annie said last week, and explained the buffer, et cetera, and they are going to be addressing that and going through the proper channels to achieve approval.
Thank you. I would assume as civil consultants come on board, they would have picked all that up, that's for sure.
Yes.
Can I ask Ms. Rossi a question about that?
Absolutely.
Sure.
Karen, so there is, because there's certain exceptions you can use, so they qualify for one of those exceptions?
They will be applying to the zoning board and seeking relief and going to request an exception, yes.
So they qualify for one, because there's only a certain number of things you can get exception for, right?
Correct. Yep.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions for the library personnel?
Steve has one, I think.
Steve has one. Go ahead, Steve.
So I'm pretty sure that my predecessor did ledge probes over there, and probes have already been done.
Soil samples? Huh.
Where would, actually, Karen Rossi found a hand-drawn map from this site when they were moving to the Daily building. And I don't know if those are the ones that you're talking about, Steve, but if you know where they are, it would be good for us to see them and have them in our file.
Well, Karen has them if she found them.
Karen, are you there?
Yes, I believe that I did already give them to them, Steve.
Oh, is that the one you sent me in the mail?
Yes, I'll confirm tomorrow with Steve that they're the same thing.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other hands I missed or chat? No, I don't see anything.
I think you're all set.
Okay, thank you very much. Next item. Now we're going to move to Mr. Bugby, Town Hall renovation.
All right. The only thing I'd like to tell the board is the board is working on basically what we talked about last time, a plan for the rehabilitation of the town hall and also planning for an administrative building. So we're working through that particular process. So we'll have that for the board. We'll meet this Thursday, so probably at the next meeting I can give you an update in terms of when we should have that available. Mr. Chapin is continuing to work on his spreadsheet so we can do long-range planning for those particular funding needs. So that's all I have at the moment. So
I appreciate that very much. Next item of business, Julie Glover, Town Administrator.
Yeah, at this point, I'm probably going to defer to Don Quigley so he can walk you through this document that you see in front of you that he drew up. This is relevant to the informational session that we're having this Saturday. And then we can move on to talk about the PowerPoint presentation.
Yes. Okay, Don, you have the floor.
Okay, thanks. I don't know, maybe we ought to, rather than tackling this right away, we ought to talk a little bit about what transpired Friday afternoon with more information from the state. We've got an emergency declaration from the governor that allowed towns to have flexibility with things like the dates for the setting their own dates for information sessions and also the voting. And so that sort of threw up some questions from various people about the possibility of postponing the sessions to a later date. And then from that, of course, the questions arise, what liabilities do we have to stick with the same sort of schedules and dates that the rest of our community and in fact the school district is using voting on March 9th. So those things were presented at the last minute after we did all our sort of decision making about how we were going to process this. Now, I'm interested in gathering some information from the rest of you. I should tell you right off the bat that my inclination is to continue the course that we've started and keep the dates that we've started and process it as we've intended. We had a meeting last Wednesday with a group of people over at the transfer station. And at the transfer station, we came up with a plan I think is workable, not optimal, but workable. And so I guess I'm interested in discussing with this group to find out if there are any strong opinions about the possibility of altering the dates of this process.
I assume when you had your meeting, Linda was there, right? You are in agreement?
Linda was there, right? Julie and Karen Rossi.
Mm-hmm. My feeling is pretty strong on this. We already sent out the mailer. It's already been advertised. We've had the governor's permission to move forward in this direction. I don't see why we want to change at this time.
Any other strong feelings among the board or?
Well, I'll reiterate my strong feeling. Farmers Almanac says snowstorm on the election day in March. So I want to move it. So I will reiterate my strong feelings from the last meeting that I think we should consider moving it. So.
Let me speak, Julie, but we've had snowstorms before on voting day.
Yeah, but not with our staff and residents outside. That's my particular issue. So, and in terms of, let's say it's a blizzard, let's say it's a regular snowstorm, ballots getting wet. I would like us to consider to move it. So,
well, we do have legislation now that allows us to postpone, routinely postpone meetings because of weather. So that's an option for us now that didn't exist last time we panicked over this issue.
Well, we got one that says let's stick, and the other one says let's jump. But that wouldn't. But the information sessions would stay the same. Is that correct?
We would have the option to change that as well. So we can set those. We can set the other the date for the voting. Curious to hear from Julie and Linda and Karen Rossi.
Okay, the floor is open. Anybody would like to speak? Go ahead.
Sure. This is Julie. So legally, we can certainly change our minds about following HB 1129. We could move that out. We could say we changed our minds. We don't want to do it. We're going to have a deliberative session in May and we'll vote in June. We could keep the informational sessions, but decide to move the voting day out from March. We are not required to keep it the same day as the school system. So that is also an option. I mean, they might not be happy because they won't, you know, they won't be able to process anything until they get the leave vote, but it can be done.
Let me just talk on that a little bit. If we were to move things, I'd want to string them together. I don't think we'd want to have, you know, information sessions in February and then final voting in May or June. It's too far apart.
I will
Somehow
tell
you need to put them together, but that's just an opinion.
I will tell you that the advice about moving the information sessions was don't do it because it's going to be massively confusing to everybody at this point.
Yes, it will be, since we already sent out the cards, right?
Right.
Linda, Karen.
Have we spoken with whoever we would have to speak to at the school to see how upset they'd be? I don't even know who we'd talk to if we did decide to move it or ask their opinion. I mean, would it be the superintendent? Do you have any idea, Julie?
I mean, yeah, I guess we'd first want to talk to Dr. Morse about it. And again, I'm guessing that they won't be happy, but
no, and I was just thinking of what the logistic. I mean, what, you know, do they have to hold all about? I guess I was just thinking their end of it. Do they have to hold the ballots and then run them all on the after we do ours, or can they run the two towns? And you know, it just I would love to move the voting to April or May, but I'm really concerned about how that impacts the school and the relationship with the school.
And I don't want to, I don't care about changing the voting day. Like if it's going to snow, we can push it off. We know what's happening right now. We don't know what's going to happen in May. There's a new variant that's supposed to be spread easier, be worse for you. We know what we've got right now as far as the, you know, the deliberative session, the HB 111. Sorry, Julie, I can't think of the name.
1129.
Yeah, I think we should get that over with because who knows what's going to happen in May? We could have the new variant. We could all, you know, it's supposed to be worse. It's supposed to move faster. We're not all going to be vaccinated. Let's just get that part over. And if we get if we know we're getting a bad weather or bad snowstorm coming in March 9th, we can move it then. But Scott, I think the Old Farmer's Almanac is great, but I don't predict I don't plan anything by the Old Farmer's Almanac. Sorry.
You're 60% correct. You never can tell.
You never can tell, but there's that 40% that's not correct. So I think we should just move forward as planned. Julie's already put a lot of effort and hard work into this. We've already spent $1,000 to get it mailed out. Plus, let's just go on as scheduled. That's my opinion.
Well, ultimately, it comes down to the moderator. So if the moderator chooses wrong, I can always say, Don, I told you so.
My shoulders are broad.
I know they are. I've seen you.
Okay, so it is my opinion that we should continue on the course we selected, and which includes the first information session is coming Saturday at 9 o'clock.
I agree.
There we go. Rock and roll. I guess we're in cement at this point.
In for a dollar, in for a dime. Okay, and so that brings us to the presentation here in front of us. I just quickly worked up a draft of the way this information session might work. Start out with a note from me, taking full blame for all of this, and then moving to Julie, who would go through the technology of the Zoom features and how we're going to use them. And we don't have all the details on that yet, but we'll have them before Saturday morning. And then she's going to read the introductory paragraphs to inform all the people present what our intentions are and how it plugs into HB 1129. Then she'll introduce myself, the assistant moderator, the town clerk, and the select board, and then I'll recap the sort of decisions of how we came to this decision, and then we'll call the meeting to order. And calling the meeting to order, we'll state the purpose and the objectives, introduce and explain each article, but we won't take questions at this time till the end. My sort of feeling is that we want to just blast through the articles and their explanations, and then open it up at the end of that for questions and feedback from the voters through a question and answer or a chat function as part of the Zoom meeting. My thoughts on that part of it would be that someone, not myself, but maybe Julie, Denise, somebody else, will sort of consolidate some of these questions, find common themes that we might be able to answer with one response rather than dealing with each individual person. And so that's what they sort of do with the Secretary of State Zoom sessions, the training sessions I've been involved with, and it works very well to have sort of a clerk saying, okay, we have 3 questions about Article 4. Can we reiterate or answer? And then I would call upon one of you, whoever among you that have dealt with the introductions of Article 4 to elaborate on it or answer the questions. You see I've made some blanks here for people to sign up. That is the select board to determine which articles they might well like to introduce, just as a suggestion. Don't have to do that tonight, but sometime between now and Saturday it would be helpful.
Actually, we better do it tonight because you never know what's going to happen. It could be a snowstorm between now and next Saturday.
What's the almanac say, Scott?
Yes, Scott.
What? You want me to check the almanac right now?
Oh, God.
So I would leave it up to the board to decide which articles they want to deal with. Of course, we know that starting with article number 2 is going to be that that article that is the up or down vote on the process.
Mm-hmm.
And so we need 50%, which I'm confident we can get 50% or more of the people agreeing to the process if we carefully explain the conditions by which we've made these decisions and how we think it's going to work. And then number 3 through number 16 would be members of the board.
Okay, so you're doing number 2. Is that what you're telling me?
I can, yes.
All right, that's you.
So, Don, you'll do number 1 though as well, right? You usually do 1 anyways.
Yeah, the opposite.
Yeah, that's okay. Yep, 1 and 2.
Who wants to do 3?
I've done it in the past.
Good, you can do it now.
Under the bus, under the bus. Well, Julie's really done all the work for me here.
I know.
She's done all the work, so appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to know what those articles are, Julie can slide the screen down to the articles that she's presented.
Oh.
Or Denise can, because I'm
okay.
technologically challenged tonight.
Okay.
One thing I do have, Julie, on slide number 16.
You mean page 16?
Excuse me?
Page 16?
Well, on the presentation, page number 16, benefits, the wording in the warrant articles says 15, but on the chart here it says 30. That was what recommended by the ABC. Can we tweak that?
Wait. Say, oh, yep, I see what you're saying. Yep.
So they recommended 30, but the warrant article says 15. I think we agreed on 15.
Yep, thank you.
So if we can tweak that, that would be great.
All right, so let me just reiterate. Don, you're going to do 1 and 2. Scott, you're going to do 3.
Yep.
I think Mr. Brown, you're doing 4.
Sure.
Okay.
Can we also have the chief available for that one if anybody has any questions?
Chief Nemeth, you going to be there?
Yeah, I can be there.
Okay, just in case. questions in the end. Again, we're just going to introduce it, talk about it, just to make an introduction, and that's it. It's kind of read and talk for a few minutes of why it's there. And then at the end of all this, I guess Don will take questions at that time.
Right.
And I guess since, Corey, you're doing Article 4, it looks like Article 5 is close enough to do that. Why don't you do that as well?
Yeah, I do 5.
6 is even closer.
No problem.
Oh, yeah, he's on a roll. Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, my God. The next one is, trying to read it, 7 is library.
Yep.
Yeah. I'll take that one.
You want to do that one?
Yeah. What's 8?
Can we stay on 7 for just a minute? That's the language I'm not happy with. The total cost, 800,000.
Oh, it's 8. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't want to overstep bounds here, Mr. LaCourse, but I don't think the board's in favor of that particular number.
100,000?
No. The description.
That's
what I spoke to before. I'm in favor of whatever those funds are available in those 2 capital reserve funds. That's the public money for that particular project. If they wish to raise more, that's up to them. But I'm not in favor of, expending that much money out of town funds.
This is the warrant article that the board approved the other night?
But the warrant article, but not the description underneath.
Yes, no, that was part of the warrant article.
Yeah, I don't remember that.
We can't change that.
Right, you can change it after the first information session.
Okay.
So to go for approval, we can make modifications at that point.
Okay.
But
Thank
good
you.
point. All right, do you want to talk about 7 instead of me?
No.
All right.
Thank you.
So
I have number 3. That's like 20 slides. Jeez.
I know, but it's all prepared. We're off
Well,
the
that's true, but my voice is going to give out.
The next one is $40,000 for the highway equipment. I'll do that one since I'm doing 7. I might as well do 8. And obviously Steve will be around, I hope.
Yeah.
I would like to see if the fire chief could do the 7, 8, or 8, 9, and 10 for me, so I could take the day off.
Oh, okay, I see. Long as somebody's there can speak to it.
I was kidding. I was trying to make it funny.
Yeah, I didn't hear the fire chief accede to that, though, Steve.
No, I didn't see him jump up and down.
I'll be there. I was trying to get him to do it for me, but I'll be there.
Well, as you can see, the fire chief is a little bit more astute than you gave him credit for. He didn't even respond. So.
I know.
So I'm going to do, let me stick on this one, 8. And then I'll do 9 as well. That's JL. And the transfer station, I'll stay with it. So I'm on a roll at this point. This one for you, Scott, number 11?
I can.
Okay. Next one is 15,000 internal expendable fund service. That sounds like a Carrie one. Got that, Carrie Brown? Are you there? Mr. Brown, are you there?
I am here now.
All right, you're number 12.
Okay.
And the heck's this next one?
Contingency.
Oh, contingency. That sounds like a budget one. That sounds like a Scott Bugby.
Okay, all right.
All right, there's definitely number 14. That sounds like Carrie Brown.
Is Karen, you're going to be there too? Can you help him if there's somebody asks questions about this?
Yes, I can.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. $15.
I'll do it.
Okay, that's like 16 is.
I can do it so I can explain what the
Yeah,
$4,500 is if you would like.
Sounds good. And that's it. So everybody has You can read it and then talk about it for a few minutes, and that's it. Then
Yeah, I'll put these into the format that I usually do for the deliberative session and send it out to everybody.
Thank you.
Does anybody have any other comments or questions about the slides? Other than the correction from Mr. Bugby?
I'll take a look at it again a little bit later.
Julie, you did a good job putting all that together. Thank you.
Thank you.
Looks nice.
I have another correction.
Please.
Sure.
On slide 16, or page 16, Town Buildings Capital Reserve Fund.
Yeah.
That says the 50,000, which is the older number.
Oh, that's true. That's true.
Man.
Good catch, John.
Oh, on that slide, huh?
That's now
100.
100. Yep. Yeah.
The article.
Huh. Okay, thank you.
Go ahead.
I guess you've done among all of them. I do like the feature that we put in how much is in the fund. I think that gives a lot of information for the people watching.
Yeah, one thing though, I want to comment on our warrant article 4.
Yeah.
So where it says, no, this warrant article is null and void if warrant article 5 does not pass. That is just a note on this slide. We did not add that as language to the warrant article.
Okay.
I don't know whether you want to do that as an amendment after the first informational session, but I think you might also want to, Scott Nemeth and I talked about this the other day, and it may be that because of how long it takes to get a fire engine, that may not be an issue.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think, Scott, what you said was there's going to be 2 years worth of deposits by the time you get the fire truck. Is that what you said?
No, it would probably just be the one, because we'll have to pay, if this passes, how it usually happens is when we order it, we pay for the cab, which is about half of it, and then we pay the rest at the end of it when we pick it up for final purchase, which is usually about a year later. The bigger thing is that we're guessing it's about 650,000 for what we're looking at, but we don't know our trade-in value of the current engine.
Oh,
so
that's
that's going to go towards the price of it as
okay,
well.
but you don't think there's any chance it's going to be more than 650?
No, not at all.
Okay.
It'll be under that.
Okay. Okay.
I have 2 comments.
Mm-hmm.
There's a like an auto correction mistake in the 3rd line there on warrant article 4. It says for the purchase of purchasing.
Should be purpose of purchasing. But the problem is I don't think anybody caught that in the actual warrant.
Oh.
Because this was just cut and paste.
Okay.
But again, that can all be corrected for the ballot.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other, Scott?
No, go ahead.
The other question is, when you're talking about the price and that the 650,000 does not include the trade-in, is it being traded into the same company? And so would you thus get a bill for less than the 650,000?
It would go towards the price with the same company.
So if the trade-in price ends up being like a separate item and that check comes into the town, I don't think that money automatically ends up in the fund. If the invoice from the company shows 650,000 minus 50,000 for the trade-in, and so you only pay the lower amount, then you're all set.
I'd have to double check, but I think with the tanker, it came right off the price, so we didn't. They took it off the price of the truck.
Okay, that would work then.
Yeah.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, John. I'll end up going to the unassigned fund balance or something else. Yeah.
And my comment was going to be, more eyes that see it, the better.
Oh, yeah.
Because we've been looking at this for a while, and I didn't catch that purpose versus purchase. So, great.
And we saw that 3 times.
Yeah.
4 times.
The more people that look at it, the more times you
Hey.
find these things. So
That's right.
Anything else?
Anything else with respect to, we're all set with the drive-up ballot. We did the January 30th station. That's about it.
Yeah, the only other comment I wanted to make is that the governor's emergency order on Friday did allow us to have pre-processing of ballots, which was something that we were very interested in doing last time. And depending on how many absentee ballots we have to process this time, it might be very handy to be able to do it again. So other than that, I think I do want to sit down with Julie a little bit this week and talk about the technology of chats versus question and answer process on this Zoom thing. And hopefully we'll have that down by Saturday.
Okay.
can I ask a question, Don?
Sure.
This is the kind of the script, if you will, for session number 1. What's the script for session number 2?
Do we have to produce that tonight?
Well, the board is not meeting again before that. I believe.
Here's my take on session number 2, is that we have a process for looking at all the comments that come back in. And there is a mechanism for commenting via email, via phone. And so we have that in place. By Friday, we'll have to get back together with you guys. We're going to have a meeting, I think, to look at these comments to see which ones might warrant you're posing an amendment to any of these articles.
Well, that's going to happen during the second information session.
Right. So during the session is when they amendments through that process. But I think we would need to evaluate the comments coming in to see what that all looks like, maybe on that Friday afternoon. And maybe we could get some members of the select board to look at the comments and have a little planning session before we engage in that second session, just to see what the comments are like.
Again, I really do think that that is the sole purpose of the second session.
Right.
That the board sees the questions and the comments and then deliberates on each warrant article considering the public comment.
Just like where we do in the deliberative. The discussion is, you know, they present the warrant article, there's a discussion and they discuss whether to change it. And
I'm just suggesting that the board could peek at these things ahead of time a little bit, so there's a bit of a heads up.
But if they meet, they have to have a meeting, and they have to have a Zoom meeting, I would assume, on Thursday, Friday, I mean.
Yeah, part of I understand where you're going, Don. It'd be interesting to group the questions for Article 3, group the questions for Article 4, and a lot of them might have the same, thematic issues that are associated with it. But I'm not sure we want to have a Board of Selectmen meeting. I don't know how to handle that.
I understand. So we won't do it. I'll have to come up with a system for how we're going to process each of the comments made by the voters the week.
The comments are due by the Friday before at I think noon.
Right.
So I'm going to compile all of them and sort them, if you will.
Okay.
So that you're right. Anything that has to do with warrant article 3 is all grouped together. Warrant article 4 is grouped together, and so forth.
All right. That's what I was suggesting, that we at least get to that point. So you're going to do that. That's great.
Yes.
Julie, we have to read all of them, though, correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, but I'm not, there's no point in gathering all of these and then throwing them up in the air like a deck of cards. And, there should be an order to them. So I will pre-sort them.
Okay.
And it could be that 25 people ask the same question. You can say a group of individuals ask the same questions on, Article number 6, and they can be answered. Then when we're done with the questions that come in by, how they ever come in and do at that time, there'll be questions from the floor, but they'll be tied to one article at a time.
Well, now you just confused me, John. It's my understanding you have to read every single one of them out in the meeting. So if 10 people say, why are you doing this in Article 4? Don't you have to read all 10 of them? You just can't say 10 people said this. Somebody can clarify that for me?
They have to register their comments by giving their name and their address. Whether every one of them has to be read, I still don't have a clear picture of that in my own mind. So let me do a little research on that.
Okay.
We also talked about at the meeting at the transfer station, is there going to be some vetting of the questioners? Are they registered voters? That's another thing that we don't have, I think, a definitive answer from the state on. I mean, obviously, if you're at the deliberative session, you know, you have to be a registered voter, but
actually not to comment. The moderator.
Oh, that's true. Only to vote on. Yeah.
Everybody can make a comment, but not everybody can vote or amend an article. And so that would be the restriction. So.
Well, if you have the names, Julie, on Friday, I can look through the checklist and
okay.
That way you can say whether the person is a voter or not.
Right.
Yeah, I would want to know that, to consider that with their comments.
Yeah, that's easy enough to do.
So if, you know, 20 people show up from Durham and they say, well, I want my taxes raised, I want to know that those people aren't, you know, leave voters. So I'll hear their comments, but I will take that with a grain of salt versus 20 people from Lee saying, I want to raise my taxes. So.
I've gotten a little confused. I'm wondering if I could just ask if maybe Denise or somebody could put together a calendar of events that starts this process and moves us through it. And, what I don't know right now in my mind. I don't know when the first gathering is. I just wonder if we could put together just a calendar that says here's how it's going to fall out.
Sure. Did you get one of the postcards?
No.
Because a friend of mine lives on Thurston Drive, and you're the other T.
You're the other T.
Thornton. You're the other one. Yeah, we can put something together for you.
All right, thank you.
I'm just curious as the process. If an amendment is made, obviously at the deliberative, the person writes it, signs it, and then the moderator reads it. How is the amendment going to be recorded? I guess
the select board.
We make the decision.
So,
right, but
I think what you're, Linda, as clerk, you're going to have to record any amendments.
Exactly.
Minutes.
So
and when the process is finished and the article's finished being discussed, then we're going to move that article to the ballot.
Yeah.
And so that's what happens at the end. If there are no amendments made, we move it to the ballot. If there are amendments made, we move it to the ballot as amended. And so you'll be, as our clerk, you'll be maybe having to read back some of these amendments for the select board so they can vote on it.
Right, and that's what I'm saying. Typically, the person, you know, writes it and then signs it. So I don't know whether that's going to be is required at these sessions.
Well, they won't be able to do a signature, but you could at least read back the amendment before they take that vote.
Yeah.
Aaron has a question. I don't know, John, if you're taking questions.
Yes, I am. Go ahead.
Karen Long has a question.
Please. Karen, you have the floor.
Hi there. Thank you. No, I don't have a question. I have a comment. The question that I guess Scott asked or someone asked about, do you have to read all of the comments? And from what I've been observing and hearing in all of the stuff with 1129 is even if it is the same question, you still have to read it in very much as if they were standing there at a regular deliberative session. But you, as the select board, can and or the moderator can say this was previously answered.
Oh, I got you.
Unfortunately, if there are 10 questions or 10 comments, we want to reduce the budget by 300,000 or whatever it is, you would still have to read that person's name and address. You're obviously going to identify whether or not they're a voter, and then just indicate that in fact it had been previously answered because it goes as part of the official record.
Okay.
Very much like if we were at a regular session and you know, it was being recorded in the minutes.
Don, I have a question for you then. So let's go ahead and we put this on the floor, it's seconded, and there's discussion, and all the questions are read, and we discuss it as a board. Then an amendment comes up that opens the floor for discussion.
Only among the governing body, that's you three.
Right. The only discussion is going to be among the select board.
So no other people, even though they're here, they're listening, they
No.
don't have any input whatsoever.
That's correct. Only through the means by which you've provided them, which is the, you know, email, phone, regular mail.
Okay. I got it. So we're not taking questions from the floor in the second session is what you're telling me.
Correct.
That is our interpretation as of now, yes.
Actually, that makes me breathe a little easier because just thinking about that is if we were taking questions from the floor and every time an amendment come up, then we'd have to let everybody respond and then we'd have to discuss. Yeah, so I think it's a lot better off the way you have it planned and the way it's laid out at this point.
And I think the reason that they didn't do that was the fact of somebody making an amendment has to be a registered voter, so there's no real process to do that.
Yes, I understand. Huh. Interesting. Okay, is there anything else for Don and crew about this? I guess we're ready to rock and roll, aren't we?
We'll be ready.
Okay, thanks, Don. Let's move on. I move to accept the consent agenda as presented. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second.
I do have
assume
a
Julie
second.
was done?
I assume she was. She didn't say anything.
Okay. Yeah, I seconded.
All right, I got the second. Any discussion on the motion?
No.
No, I didn't think so. Roll call vote, Mr. Bugby?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Ms. LaCourse, yes, motion carries. Any miscellaneous unfinished business for the board?
Not at this particular time unless Denise has any updates on the volunteer of the year.
Denise?
I have received nothing.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, on that one. Okay, let's move on. I move to enter into a non-public session of Hampshire RSA 91-A:32A. Do I have a second?
Second.
Assume there's no discussion at this point. Roll call vote, Mr. Bugby?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Ms. LaCourse, yes. Thank you. Somehow we need to hold their feet to the fire a little bit because that is quite a lot of money sitting out there.
Well, the thing that kind of...
I agree with that. That's that. I mean, really, for me, he's echoing, John's echoing my words.
Okay.
I feel the exact same way.
But I am enthused about the fact it's been turned down several times. You know, all the times we try to do it before and before you and everybody else trying to make this work. They're taking it on their own. They don't want to bond it. So I want to give them some movement that they're at least taking this and running with it instead of just complaining and being stagnant.
Okay.
So,
Okay. I was taken aback when they announced, was it last meeting or the meeting before, when they said their project is now 800,000. It was my estimation that they were going to use the funds that were available to them because they didn't want to bond, and anything augmented would be some monies that they raised. But when they announced that it was 800,000, and I understand some of it's fundraising, that's fine. I'm perfectly fine with that. So if my personal opinion would be they have the money in those two trust funds, use them. If they want to augment any of that with donations or things like that, I'm perfectly fine with that. But I do not want to put any more money of the town's money into that particular project. So
that's why we didn't move in that article we removed. Remember, they're supposed to add, what, 25,000 to it?
Yeah.
I think we're feeling the same way.
Okay. All right. I just wanted to see where the other two selectmen, in terms of their position on that particular issue, were. So thank you.
Okay. Anything else, Julie?
No.
Anything else?
No, I had enough fun. Can we be done now, John?
I move to adjourn. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you very much.
Night.